All right, you guys, I'm going to kick this thing off if you don't mind. Welcome to today's presentation. My name is Dr. Patrick Callahan. I'm the president of the Alliance for Excellence in Online Education. We're a group of dedicated teachers, instructional designers, and administrators who, for the last 19 years, has focused on promoting best practices and celebrating excellence in online education. Welcome to the first in a series of micro seminars focused on providing insights into best practices of online education. Today's topic is the effective use of quick survey results in the era of COVID-19. During this pandemic, with so many changes and challenges in online course delivery, it's critical to get immediate and insightful feedback from stakeholders. So this is a very timely topic. I'd like to first introduce our moderator, Diane Ruiz Carnes. Diane is a higher education consultant specializing in curriculum development, evaluation, assessment, and development of faculty skills and their roles as educators. She has experience in consulting and performance improvement, academic program development, evaluation and assessment programs, and instructional design. Her career includes program management, regulatory compliance, and information technology provided through her company, Carnes Management LLC. I'm also pleased to introduce today's presenter, Dr. Drew Smith. Dr. Smith is the Director of Online Learning at Walsh College in Troy, Michigan, where he oversees the design, development, and technical support for all of Walsh College's online and hybrid courses. His interests include academic integrity in the digital age, engaging emotional intelligence in online education, and optimizing assessments around real-world experiences. Dr. Smith earned his PhD in depth psychology with focuses on the unconscious and transpersonal aspects of the human experience. He and his family live in Shelby Township. Without further ado, I'll turn the seminar over to our moderator, Diane.
Thank you, Patrick. Welcome, everyone, and for the introductions and kicking off our first micro seminar. Wanted to cover a little housekeeping before we get started with Dr. Smith. So first of all, this session is being recorded and it will be available to you on the A4EOE site. And once that's been set up, we will send an email out to everyone. And some of the housekeeping guidance is everyone, to help everyone with sharing their thoughts and questions and answers during the seminar, is your microphone and your video are turned off so that we can facilitate the meeting using the Q&A option that's down at the bottom of your screen. So if you move your mouse down, and I'm sure many of you have used Zoom and you're familiar with it, but there's a Q&A button there that Patrick and I will be monitoring for specific questions related to the seminar. You can also use the chat area, which you have started using, to talk with each other and share conversation. And one of the things that you want to do is set your chat session down at the bottom so that it includes all panelists and attendees so that everyone can see your chat. And it's there that you should also be able to see the attendee's name on there. I think that's it. I just want to make sure we've got everything covered. So again, use the Q&A to address any questions to Dr. Smith, and Patrick and I will facilitate those at the end of our seminar or address them as needed as we go through the seminar. So I'd like to proceed and welcome Dr. Smith.
Thank you so much. Everyone, it's great to be here, great to be doing this. Excited about sharing what we've gone through. I mean, I think we're all, finally, I think the dust is starting to settle from this whole pandemic chaos. We're kind of on the tail end of it, but some really exciting things I think are taking place because of the because of this. I want to share about one of the experiences we had at Walsh because of the pandemic and because we really wanted to focus on our students and their needs. So let's see. I'm going to try and reshare my screen again. Hold on. There we go. All right, are we good? I think we're good. Flash your mic for me, Diane, if we're good.
We're good, thank you.
Okay, perfect, thank you. So I am Drew Smith. I'm the Director of Online Learning at Walsh College. Walsh is a private upper division business college that provides undergraduate, graduate, and doctoral degrees located in Troy, Michigan. We are a commuter school. We support approximately 2,500 non-traditional students. The median age of our students is around 29 for undergrad and 33 for graduates. So most of our students are attempting to balance jobs and family responsibilities along with their education. We run 11-week quarters, with most of our courses counting for 3 credit hours. Historically, we've been offering classes in several modalities. About 55% of our classes were delivered asynchronously, virtually, right? We call those V courses. They are totally online, asynchronous through Moodle. Around 40% of those of our courses were developed using were delivered using a hybrid model. So blending on ground and online. Typically that would be kind of in a 2+2 scenario where we're 2 hours on ground in person and then 2 hours online, leveraging Moodle for that. And then the other 5% were offered fully on ground with little or no online content, with the exception of an online syllabus and a course shell. So we entered 2020 with some challenges already ahead of us. We were headed into an accreditation year for ACBSP and with HLC. Enrollment was continuing to decline. Our CAO had just stepped down, followed closely by our president. And then COVID forced the building to close 4 days before final exams started. So it was quite a tumultuous period of time right when COVID hit. We were a little scrambled. Everybody was scrambling, right? We were all scrambling. Fortunately though, all courses already had an online shell. So students were already enrolled in that. So at Walsh, that was one problem we didn't have to try and solve right away, right? It was already taken care of. That alone was a huge hurdle. Fortunately, we had already addressed that. But as I mentioned, the majority of our courses already had a major online component. So many courses that were being delivered as a hybrid or a 2+2 course actually were developed for fully online delivery, which meant that there were some pre-created online exams, even if the instructors chose to use on-ground exams, when they met in person. But for the few courses that were strictly on-ground, we had to expedite converting all of those on-ground exams into online versions of those exams, right? Then for the instructors new to using Moodle, we we helped them facilitate their courses, providing a crash course in using Moodle, how to work through their exams, how to make sure that their exams were set up properly, etc. All of this was voluntary for faculty who wanted the extra help. From there, we provided some quick Zoom training for faculty who needed that to facilitate a face-to-face proctoring setting, right? And then once we survived finals week and we came through we survived, we did okay. Once we survived, our spring semester began just a week later. So really we had to make some quick turnarounds this entire time. Courses that were designated to run as hybrid or 2+2 or on ground were now immediately transitioned to a remote delivery. And students really didn't have much choice in the matter. No one really had a choice, right? The campus were closed. Some instructors chose to utilize their asynchronous content that they already had, even if the course was initially designated to be a hybrid or an on-ground course. They opted just to use that online content. Other instructors chose to include opportunities for Zoom sessions, whether they were supposedly running a fully online or a hybrid or an on-ground. Some chose to do Zoom meetings throughout the week, even though the course was specifically designated to be running as a fully online course. This left us with the question, well, once we got a few weeks into the semester, what about the students, Because COVID waits for no one, things were moving incredibly fast and there wasn't much time for anyone to adjust to this new norm, right? And then that included leaving no time for students to mentally prepare for the shift in delivery modalities. As such, we really didn't have any insight into how these shifts were affecting our students. And equally disconcerting, we had no real opportunity for students to voice their needs or their struggles or their concerns, right? Like most institutions, we do leverage an end of survey semester for students to express their perspectives and feedback, but we couldn't wait until the end of the semester to get feedback. We needed to know how to support our students in the moment and really bring as much stability to the crazy time as possible. As such, we decided to leverage mid-semester surveys to tap into our student needs. So for those who aren't familiar, this is a tool that instructors can use to check in and see if their students are tracking with the course and the content and make any corrections right then to better support their students in the course, right? Byrne and Dolan say that mid-semester evaluations provide instructors with feedback while they still have time to refine their teaching, which can be beneficial for addressing issues before the high-stakes end-of-semester evaluations. Right, so these are usually really brief surveys happening in week 3, week 4 of a semester, 3 to 5 questions, and they're focused on generalities such as how to support and engage students more effectively in the course and to make sure that students are tracking with the instructor and the teaching style and teaching method. But it also provides a practical and actionable insight for the instructor to act on right then. It's a great way to check the pulse of your students and course correct before we get too far into the semester and too close to those high stakes assessments. So at the time, I worked with the interim provost to identify 3 different questions that might give us a good gauge on what's working now and what we can improve on. And I'll get to the questions in a moment. Once identified, we reached out to the department chairs and got their buy-in, right? Things were moving very, very fast. We created, once it was completed there, we created a Qualtrics survey for distribution. So this is normal. This is a different tool than what we use for our end of semester evaluations. It allowed us a lot of flexibility in distributing the survey and collecting the data and reviewing the data, massaging and manipulating the data to really find out what it is we needed to know. And then also, we didn't want students to confuse this survey with the end of semester one. So a totally different look and feel actually seemed quite appropriate. And then finally, to distribute, an email went out from the interim provost to all the students with a link to the survey. Additionally, we provided an open announcement in Moodle that provided the link to students to take. So students could take it as many times as they want. They were also given the opportunity to select the class that they were taking so that we could better target exactly where some problems might lie. And I'll get to that in a minute. We let the survey run for 10 days and then closed it down to reflect on the data. So these are the questions that we asked. First, what's helping you learn in this class? What is making learning difficult? And what could be done to help you learn more effectively? So we opted for these 3 questions because they really targeted what's going on right now, what's going right, what's going wrong, and asked for specific and actionable items for or feedback that we can improve on immediately. So since students were also asked to select their current course, we could also address specific concerns with course design, course facilitation, or even supporting faculty or students who had never really facilitated an online course before. So I do want to mention that, I mentioned that we serve approximately 2,500 students or so. We got about 10% response rate back, about 280 students, so a little bit over 10%, which in my opinion is not too bad, especially for all the chaos that was going on. And we know that, the end of semester surveys always hard pressed to get feedback from students, but students really seem to engage with this survey and give us a lot of really great insight. So here is what the students had to say. For the first question, what's helping you learn in this class? Looking at the results in the first question, students were pretty clear about strategies that were supporting their learning, right? Some instructors initiated drop-in Zoom sessions. Students seem to really appreciate that. Some chose to facilitate live lectures over Zoom. This, again, could have been in a hybrid course or in a fully virtual course or a fully asynchronous course. Many appreciated the asynchronous lectures in Moodle. We got a lot of comments from students saying that they really did like the opportunity to go back, review the content on their own time, as opposed to, if they're in ground or if they're on campus live, then there's no chance for them to rewind what the professor just said. They really appreciated the professor's ability or availability and the ease of access to the instructor. That was really great. And instructors seemed to be a little bit quicker in their responses. So that was also very helpful, right? Sorry. Some students really appreciated the textbook. And maybe this is the first time that they actually read the textbook. I don't know, they had time on their hands, right? They also appreciated the instructor's enthusiasm, right? That seemed to make a huge difference in how the students then felt in the course. And there were a lot of opportunities for virtual chat sessions or impromptu office hours. So overall, we saw that students were really relying on faculty engagement to support their learning. Whether that was a synchronous Zoom session or even video recordings, the instructor's approach to the course and to the students made a huge difference. Now, what made learning difficult? Not oddly enough, life in general, right? Students had a lot to juggle. Again, we're dealing with students who are in their mid-20s, mid-30s. They've got families, they've got job responsibilities, they've got children at home who are trying to navigate this pandemic together. We also realized that when there were courses that had no face-to-face interaction, students really found that troublesome. One issue that students did mention was textbooks not arriving in time for the beginning of the semester. Again, we only had a week in between times to deal with the changing of going from a winter to a spring semester. Fast change, so textbooks getting shipped out was also a little bit of a trouble. Tech fatigue. Students were saying that they were spending way too much time on their devices. We now call it Zoom fatigue, right? But back then, 6-9 months ago, that was still pretty brand new. We saw that some students really wanted deeper explanations from the professors and also more communication. They needed that engagement from the instructor. Overall, there really seemed to be a lot of apprehension about life in general, right? Things in the students' world were incredibly unstable, And when comparing the first question to the second question, we were able to infer that students relied on their instructors to provide the stability throughout this crazy time. They needed more face time. They needed more communication with their faculty, right? It also pointed out some logistical issues that we needed to address, such as our bookstore. And we saw students can only take so much time in front of a screen, right? Too many of them were also working from home, sitting in front of their monitors all day, parenting their children, trying to get their children to sit in front of a monitor all day. Then at night, they're trying to work on their schoolwork in front of a monitor all day. We recognized that we needed to have some additional balance. Finally, what practical steps could be taken to help Walsh be more effective in the students' learning process? Overwhelmingly, students said that Zoom sessions would help. What's more, we saw that we could see that several students who stated that they were enrolled in courses originally designed to be hybrid were now being run as asynchronous. We were then able to leverage this immediately by speaking with the instructors and encouraging the instructors to have these face-to-face Zoom sessions before the end of the semester so we could get student support, or we can get support for students right away. Students wanted increased communication, right? It brought a sense of calm to the students. So we encouraged our faculty to be a little bit more proactive with the communication. Additionally, we encouraged faculty to set some office hours for students just to drop in if they weren't doing those already. That was something that the students were requesting in the survey. Zoom reviews before major summative assessments, right? And tutoring, online tutoring sessions were also encouraged. So we increased our training for approved Walsh tutors. We moved them into a virtual space so that we could accommodate students for that reason. And then finally, students were asking for some understanding by faculty of their own personal experiences and the responsibilities in this unusual time, right? I mean, as you can tell, my kid's running around, right? school waits for no one. So we've got kids all over the place. Parents are really, some parents were really struggling to try and balance it all, and they wanted some understanding from the faculty. Right? So we worked through students. They still wanted faculty to have high expectations, but to recognize the unusual circumstances we were all in. These suggestions, coupled with what wasn't going well in the course, really helped us to gain a perspective about how to best support students through all of the crazy. From there, it also created a model for what's going to work best for students, for content delivery, and for faculty to best sustain Walsh throughout the pandemic. So in response to, so this quick pulse check definitely gave us insights into how we could make immediate improvements in the courses. What was really powerful to me was the fact that it allowed us to provide immediate assistance to some of our students who volunteered their contact information and some insight into what was going on in the world. For example, we got a comment like this, right? Can't focus, lost my job, no money coming in. We don't know if we're gonna lose our house or have food to eat. And then like this, psychologically, I'm not in a place to be successful. The outside stress of losing my job, having to move due to COVID. I mean, these are real world experiences that these students were sharing with us. But as such, we were able to then bring them over into, to help them financially through the, what do we call it? The student assistance fund that we had for them. So one thing I do want to mention about this, and Diane, feel free to prompt me on this as well. But one thing that Walsh does not currently have is a really well-grounded center for students to come and get help. Crisis. We don't have a lot of, how do I say that? We don't have a center where students can go and get help for emotional struggles. A lot of our advisors have resources to provide them, but that's something that we don't have the resources on campus. So that was, yes.
It was one of the items that we had talked about and said that we would have this conversation when the slide came up was the counseling available. And as you had shared that some colleges don't have that, but you're looking for opportunities in that area, I understand?
Yeah, absolutely. I spoke with folks in our admissions department, and while they aren't licensed counselors, so they're not able to provide those counseling, they aren't able to provide professional counseling. They definitely have been able to create connections for the students with other outside resources. So the students aren't just left high and dry. I know that there are some institutions that do have counselors on campus or on-prem that could meet with the students, can help them through some of these things. While we aren't able to accommodate all of those needs, we definitely were taking away from, especially the survey, that we needed to have these resources at the ready, and have them up ready to go. Because it was coming more and more frequent that students were saying, hey, I just need someone to talk to. I'm totally stressed out. I need some help.
That is a topic also that you'll see that we're going to introduce for our next seminar is counseling for the students and helping faculty to be aware of what's available.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I'm excited about that one. Yeah, absolutely. So let's see, financially, oops, there we go. So the pulse check certainly allowed students to open up if they wanted to. And as such, we were able to, we were given opportunity to proactively identify students who needed immediate assistance, and it allowed us to support them financially. So overall, we had 116 students that received funding thus far, with 28 of the 116 having received funding for multiple terms. So it wasn't just a one and done type thing. We were able to sustain that help. And as this pandemic continues and, the governor keeps rolling things back, and as we're shifting and hopefully coming out of this thing, we've also been able to continue supporting students with an additional 12 receiving support for this semester. So far, we've been able to provide over $50,000 to assist our students directly. And that in part was because we could get the information out to students, we could track them, we could say, hey, do you need help? And then offer it for them. So we were able to use the results of this brief 3-question pulse check to proactively create a virtual synchronous designation, right? So where we were taking and using, 2 hours on ground and 2 hours online, we were able to create a hybrid modality that worked in this type of an environment where 2 hours would then be in a Zoom session that would be recorded. Students come back to later. So if things were crazy in their life and they couldn't make it through the whole Zoom session whenever they were supposed to meet, the instructor would post that recording. Students could come back when they had the time and then review the lecture content there, plus at least 2 hours worth of asynchronous content that they could get involved with as they had the ability. So this virtual synchronous has actually served us pretty well. So after the spring semester, we modified 47, that's a third of our roster, to reflect this virtual synchronous model. And then in the fall semester, we modified half of our roster to be this virtual synchronous. So now we, as we enter into the winter semester and into the spring this coming, we are 100% virtual with a blending of synchronous and asynchronous course modalities, which is pretty cool. It's really working out for students, it seems. And finally, we've been able to continue providing training for faculty, right? Incorporating best practices for the synchronous sessions. Barbara was mentioning even before we started here, one of the things she does, at the beginning of a lesson is just throw up a screen share of a city and have students try to guess, all these little tips and tricks. This is starting to become common in our culture now. So to summarize the pros of using this quick pulse survey, it allowed us to quickly identify instructors, courses, and students that needed immediate support, right? It also showed us specific courses that were best suited for specific delivery options, right? We recognized that there were some courses, because of the content or because of the student population or the requirements of the course, there were some courses that really needed that synchronous touch point with students and the faculty, right? And it allowed us to adjust the future modalities of these courses and how they should be offered from here on out. It showed us how to be more effective in supporting faculty through faculty trainings, right? Where they needed the most help, and how we could help support them so they could support the students. It showed us types of tools that instructors needed in order to better support their students, right? Finally, it showed us where we had the room to improve, such as how to best support students both in their courses and administrative needs, like issues with scheduling meetings with advisors or connecting with a bookstore. That really helped us revise and refine the whole process of in between semesters getting textbooks out to people. And it also showed us where we got it right? This was huge. So through all the chaos, it was really important to remember that we were in fact doing a good job in the face of total chaos. A lot of the surveys that we saw, students said, we recognize that you guys are doing the best you can right now, given these circumstances that we're in. And they totally appreciated that. Yes, there was always room to improve, but to know that you're actually doing something that can support your students, we took it as a win, right? It's definitely a win. So the material from students was shared with department chairs so that they can inform and so they could use it to inform and make more informed decisions about how to adjust best practices for their courses and for their disciplines, right? And overall, it seemed like faculty were generally receptive to this information. It seemed like it gave faculty a starting point to have conversations between themselves. And that's actually one of the really cool things that came out of the discussions that started around this pulse check survey. There was a lot more peer-to-peer training that happened within our faculty, right? Faculty were now supporting each other with these impromptu training sessions that they would have on how to effectively use Zoom for their class, or how they use breakout rooms more effectively, how to facilitate these, pre-lesson Q&As or polls. Faculty were trading tips and tricks, sharing war stories, right? I remember Zoom bombing when all that was happening. they were sharing experiences with each other about how they were actually making these connections over Zoom really meaningful with their students. So it opened up a lot of doors for more communication, not just within the departments, but cross-departmentally too. So I'm through my part of what I wanted to share about what we did, but do we have any questions? Is there anything that I can?
Thank you, Drew, for the very informative presentation. We'll be monitoring. Looks like everybody's using the Q&A area, the chat area. So we'll continue to use that for questions. One item that we have, Drew, on here is, what % of faculty are using surveys this semester? Is this now a Walsh College best practice?
That is a good question. It is, I don't know if that we are all using ones for the end of semester survey, but in terms of the mid-semester pulse check, something like this again, we're leaving that up to the discretion of the faculty. Some may choose to do it, some may not. It's one thing that I think is really, really beneficial and can really affect the way that faculty are engaging with their students. We also need to keep in mind that our 11-week semesters are, that's a narrow window. So there may not be a whole lot of wiggle room for some of our faculty to, if they throw a semester or they throw the pulse check survey out in week 3 or 4, they leave it open for a week. You've got 4 or 5 more semesters left to really start to refine things. That's not to say that people aren't doing it though. If they are, I'm not personally aware of it. I mean, it's a simple enough survey that they could facilitate it on their own, but we'll definitely encourage them to continue reaching out to students as they can.
Okay, we have one more question. Did faculty contact students by telephone or text to avoid too much screen time?
It's a really good question. I know of a few faculty who had phone calls with their students. Our class sizes are kind of cap out at 25, so we're not doing huge amounts of volume within each course. Those that had smaller students within the class or as smaller participants, were able to get in touch with some of the students. Email became very popular as well. That was a really quick and easy way for people to do things asynchronously, but still feel connected to each other. But in terms of all faculty, I don't think all faculty did that. But there were some that were still doing it before the pandemic too. So, they probably continued on and maybe even shared it with some of the other faculty saying, hey, this is what I did, worked really great. Maybe you should try it too.
Okay. Follow-up question on previous area that you had addressed. What was the #1 concern on-ground students expressed in making the transition to all online instruction? Did you want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, the biggest, what we're recognizing is, and I think we all of us in online kind of recognize that there are some students who are really self-motivated and driven, and they're okay working independently. They're okay with the asynchronous content. There are some students who really need that face-to-face interaction with a faculty member, right? It's a touch point for them. They feel more comfortable and secure when they can have the dialogue back and forth with a faculty member. Some of our courses, the smaller percentage that were strictly on ground, there were, this was kind of a discipline that was just slower in bringing things online, and students had not ventured out into that online world. Like, it was a whole track of courses that, just kind of kept students coming back to campus, and they built that rapport with faculty. So especially for those faculty who are used to teaching strictly on ground, there was a learning curve in how to facilitate the same sort of interaction via Zoom, or as close as you can get via Zoom, while still maintaining the relationship. And I think that's what it comes down to for students who are on ground. They want that relationship with their faculty. That's the thing that we keep hearing over and over, is that, I love to have access to my instructor. It's not just having access, because you can have access over email, but it's access as in there's a human connection that takes place. So the transition for a lot of these students from going on to online really did seem to be the fear of losing that connectivity with their faculty members and with each other. I think yeah, now 9 months into this whole thing, I don't know anyone who doesn't know what Zoom is. And I'm not saying that this is the best way to communicate. I would much rather have people sitting right here next to me and I can, be in that physical space together. And especially for, for education as well. There's something to be said for the things that transpire between people within the space between them, right? There is connectivity that happens. But for now, this is the next best thing.
Yeah. You bring up a couple of good points of the transition and learning curve that's not just on the student side, but the faculty side to other ways of communicating. Additional question, how receptive were faculty to you contacting their students? Was this a tough sale?
It was a tough sale. There, at the time, because we were moving very, very fast, this went to the department chairs, and it, when the faculty kind of found out about it, there's a lot of grapevine action that happened. Some of them were very up in arms. They were concerned. They're like, what are you going to do with this information and how are you going to use it? And I think that there was an apprehension about, what the purpose of it was. It was not well explained at the time. In retrospect, looking back, when faculty understood what it was, how it could help the students, as far as I know, all of them were in agreement. Yeah, this was a good idea. The execution of it, and I have to take some responsibility for that. The execution of it was not as smooth as it should have been. But again, we were in that breakneck speed, trying to get things done, still trying to navigate our way around all the craziness. That doesn't excuse it, but now in retrospect, there are things I definitely would have done differently, including getting the faculty on board from the get-go, rather than just the provost at the time. So having said that, knowing that there is this window into the students' world, and to know that, I think faculty may have some hesitation because typically these semester surveys, end of semester surveys, are about them. And really, we were trying to not make this about the faculty per se, but more about the delivery method of the course in general. Because we can support faculty all day, right? That's what online learning does. We're here to help the faculty, support them, make them look good. But we also want to be able to support the students in these uncertain times. So, looking back, it was a hard sell. But now I think recognizing the good that did come from it, and no one was, there's nothing punitive about it. There was no one got called out. It wasn't anything like that. Sharing some of the results with the faculty, like, oh man, I'm actually doing a really good job. Students are really appreciating the dialogue that I have, and it was encouraging for a lot of faculty because they saw the things that they were doing right and how they could continue to support their students and create a safe and comfortable learning environment.
Thank you. Follow up on communications between students and faculty. Excuse me. Barbara Konopka shares that I use short Flipgrid videos and students did respond that seeing me help them and made the experience more normal. Mm-hmm. So there are various tools that can be used. So thanks for sharing that. I have a follow-up question also too. In the area that you talked about lessons learned, actions that you've taken as a result of the survey, of those actions taken, what will you keep in place at Walsh College?
I think we'll keep in place the virtual synchronous portion or the virtual synchronous designation for course delivery. So what we're finding is that, the pandemic has changed the world. It's changed higher ed. People are now expecting things to be on demand, or things to be, on demand is really the wrong way to do it or to say it, but, they want things that are convenient and they're trying to schedule their lives around it, right? Working for me, I work from home still. It has changed the way that I work because now I'm present. I have to be conscious about how I take time away. but I can take that time away, right? You know, if I'm in the middle of working on a project, I can put my son to sleep. I can put him to bed and then come back down and keep working on it. Whereas if I were going back into the office, I wouldn't necessarily have that luxury. You know, I can take him to karate class when need be, right? So there's all of this wealth of personal time management that's been opened up. So the virtual synchronous designation allows for, you know, the asynchronous content, right? So there's at least 2 hours of asynchronous content that students can engage with on their time. There's also 2 hours of synchronous meeting. So we're meeting live face-to-face, you know, like just like in a webinar, just a normal meeting. But then those are recorded and used for playback later. So students who were putting their kids to bed or needed to step away to help an ailing parent or something, they could go away and then come back to that lecture content later. So I think really we are, I don't want to say exploiting, but we're exploiting the best of online learning, where we are getting both the synchronous personal connection, the opportunity to have that, and also the opportunity to go back and rewatch and re-listen and reabsorb things that we maybe if we had been on campus, you know, in the middle of a lecture, unless you're recording it, you know, it may have gone right over your head. But because we're recording these Zoom lectures, students can go back at their leisure and really dig through and find out what it is they need to know.
Okay. I'm not seeing an additional question, but we'll have one more if that pops up. I'd like to share some kudo comments for you. We have one here coming from, let me flip back up to that. Lost it. Well, one that was mentioned on here, it says, well, one, congratulations on your recent achievement of your PhD.
Thank
and
you.
It says, are you any smarter now that you have a PhD?
No, I'm just more in debt. just more in debt.
Well, congratulations. And sharing from Suzanne, Drew, you did a phenomenal job. He and his team navigated uncharted waters very well with leadership and authenticity. And we do have, so congratulations again. We do have one more closing comment from Sean Moore. It says we're using at Porto, sorry, I pronounced it incorrectly, I'm not familiar with it, at OU to do virtual desktops.
Interesting.
Yeah. And this is in reference to comment about mine. It was a question.
Awesome.
Okay.
Well,
thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
I just want to add, this is Patrick. We are going to do another seminar, and it was alluded to earlier. So thank you for that. This is a great segue into the next seminar, which is going to focus on student and teachers as they're dealing with the stress of the pandemic and the changes that are occurring. So we'll send out more information regarding that seminar. It's scheduled for March 19th at 10 a.m. But again, we'll certainly communicate with you guys regarding the next micro seminar. Drew, thank you so much. You did a beautiful job. And Diane, you did a great job too. So thank you for your time and your commitment to this seminar. And again, we will have this as a learning object that's going to be available to everyone. And we'll send you an email to let you know how to access it. So thank you guys.
Thank you very much, you guys. Thanks for coming. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me as well. I think this has been an awesome opportunity for everybody. So